post here and let it handle the app as well. Remember, native Next.js apps API routes require explicit export of get, post, put, patch, delete options, all of those routes. So whenever you introduce a new route to your Hono, just remember to go back to your root initialization of Hono. And if you want to, you can already do all of them here, right? If you want to, you can add all of them. I'm going to go ahead and, I will probably forget once again, and we're going to get a 404 and we're going to get reminded that we have to do it again. Let's try this now. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare my network request again. And let's click login. Let's refresh maybe. Okay, it's already here. Let me just go ahead and click this. Antonio, mail.com, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there we go, login 200. Let's see my payload. My payload is correct, exactly what I wrote. And let's see my response. My response is exactly what I wrote. And if I go inside of my terminal, there we go. We have that exact thing written here. So what I want to do before we wrap up this chapter is just create the exact same thing for my sign up route. And then in the next chapter, we're going to finally connect to AppWrite and turn that into a real user. So let's start by extracting the schema. So I want to go inside of source, features, auth, components, sign up card. And inside of here, I believe I have my form schema. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go inside of auth schemas and I will export const register schema. And I will add it here. Let me just remove the extra. There we go, like this. And then let's go ahead and create our API route. So inside of features, auth, API, my apologies, server, route.ts. Remember, we have to chain. So chain/register right here. And I'm going to go ahead and do it the way I like. So after register, we add a Z validator here. We're going to validate JSON using the register schema from .. schemas alongside our login schema here. And then we can copy and paste this entire thing. There we go. But instead of having just email and password, we're also going to have name. So we can append this as well. There we go. And we can then go inside of API and we can copy use login and paste it. And we can add use register here. Let's go ahead and change this to be use register. And let's change these two to be register. So both the response type and the request type should be changed to use auth.register here and here. And inside of here, we also have to change it to register. And nothing else needs changing. So this is all automatically inferred from the backend, from the API route. What we have to do now is revisit our components sign up card, remove the form schema, replace all instances of form schema with register schema, which we can import from .. schemas. And then we have to add our mutate method from use register, from .. API use register, and the on submit we call the mutate method, passing JSON values right here. There we go. Let's try it out. Just ensure you have no errors in any of those files. I'm going to keep my network tab open here. I'm going to go and click sign up here. I'm going to go ahead and select my name to be Antonio, my email to be antoniomail.com, and my password 1234567 And there we go, register, and you can see that my response is exactly what I have written, meaning that my payload has been properly processed. Great, we are now ready to add AppWrite and to actually save this information coming to our backend and to finally create some sessions. Great job. What we have to do now is set up AppWrite, create an API key, and install the SDK inside of our project so that we can use those information from our sign in and sign up screens to finally create a user, save them in our database, and also create a session. Before we can do any of that, you have to visit appwrite.io or use the link in the description and click on the Get Started button. Go ahead and create your account. Once you have created your account, you will probably see a screen similar to this. So I'm just going to go ahead and create my organization. I'm going to call this CWA, short for Code with Antonio, and I'm going to select a completely free plan, $0 a month. And let's click Get Started. And there we go. Now let's go ahead and let's create our project. So I'm going to go ahead and call this a Jira clone. And let's click Next here, and I'm going to select Frankfurt for the region. Let's click Create here as well. And there we go. We now have our first project right here. So what we're going to have to do next is set up a database and also set up our API keys, which I'm not sure where we can find, but we will set them up now following the documentation. So let's go and click on support here, and you can always click on the docs. And I want you to go inside of products, auth, and I want you to find SSR login. If you want to, you can explore Appwrite, on your own. They have a great documentation, but we will specifically focus on using Appwrite's server SDK. So we won't be making Appwrite requests from our browser, from the client. We have our own API and we're going to use it. So every API request from the client will be going to our API first, and then we're going to communicate with Appwrite. So make sure you are on the SSR login. No big problem if you can't find this documentation page. You don't have to do this. But if you want to learn, about the schematics of how this works, you can do that. So let's go ahead and let's see what we have to do first. So first things first, we need a server SDK. So let's go ahead and find that. There we go. Node.js SDK seems to be 14.0.0. So what you can do here is you can go and add node appwrite, and you can go ahead and append this exact version. So 14.0.0, like this. There we go. We now have the server SDK. So I'm just going to go back here. The second thing we need is to initialize an admin client. And for that, we're going to need to generate an API key. So I'm going to click here and let's see where exactly do we do that. So create an API key integrations. Let's see. I'm going to click go to console in my upper right corner here. And inside of my Jira clone here, there we go. It says integrate with your server, and I can add an API key here. So I'm going to go ahead and call this Jira clone. And I'm not going to set the expiration date. I'm going to click next here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select sessions.write right here. And I'm going to click create. We can always go back here. So let me try and find this, if I go back here. Okay, so on my overview page, if I scroll down, I can find my API keys. And I can click on an API key, and from here, we can go ahead and add some more scopes. But I think for now, this might be the only thing we need. I think we also need users.write. Go ahead and select users.write as well, and click update. So make sure your new API key has sessions.write and users.write. Great. And stay on this page for now. And I'm just going to go ahead and open this in a new tab. Here are my documentations. And I'm going to go back to auth, and I'm going to find the SSR login. And I'm going to click on tutorials at the bottom, and I'm going to select Next.js SSR. So we created our project. We already have this. We have installed Node Appwrite. And now we have to create this. But we're not going to create this part just yet. So what's the difference between the create session client and create admin client? Well, create session client is part of AppWrite's SDK, which will be called when a user directly creates new records. For example, a user creates new task. So for that, we're going to use a session client. But there is a specific functionality in our project where user is not exactly responsible for creating something. For example, a new user. A user that is not logged in, that is getting registered for the first time, cannot be responsible for creating themselves. So for that, we need an admin client. So what I'm going to focus on is just creating this, the admin client. And as you can see, for that, we're going to need a couple of environment variables here. So let's set .app first. I'm going to go inside of my .environment.local first. We have next public app URL. I'm going to add some spaces here. And here's what we have to add next. So we have to add the next public AppWrite endpoint. A very important prefix here is next public. This will allow us to read that inside of client components as well. Now let's go ahead and let's add this. And let's add this like this. And then we're going to add next AppWrite key. Notice how I didn't add public in front of it. So why do we need public here? Well, technically we don't need it since we're going to use node AppWrite. But in case you also in the future want to add client AppWrite SDK, you want to make sure that you can read using these three. But your API key should not be prefixed with next public. It won't exactly be the same as leaking your key, but adding next public will certainly make it easy for malicious users to grab it. All right, so just ensure that you have these set up. Make sure you don't misspell any of those. And now let's go ahead and let's fill our project with that. So I'm going to go ahead and do the following. I'm going to go inside of my project here and I have my API key secret. I'm going to copy this. Don't share your secret with anyone. I created a new account for this and I'm going to delete it after this. And I'm also not going to add any credit cards. So that's why I can show you this, of course, but you should not show your API keys to anyone. So make sure you have copied the API secret key. After that, let's go ahead and let's get our endpoint. So let me just find, where can we find our endpoint? Not exactly sure, but what I can see immediately is our project key. So we can copy this. I think we can also see that in the settings. There we go. You can go into settings and you can find project ID and API endpoint. So let's click project ID here, and then we can assign the project. And let's copy the API endpoint. Then we can add that here. This doesn't necessarily have to be in your environment variable, but in case you ever want to change it, or you can also self-host AppWrite using one-click setup. So if you ever want to change that, it's good to have this as an endpoint. And we can leave the database ID empty just for now, Now let's go ahead and let's do the following. Let's go inside of source, let's go inside of lib, and let's create AppWrite.ts like this. And now inside of here, let's go ahead and let's import from node AppWrite the following. We're going to add client, account, storage, users, and databases. And then let's export asynchronous function, create admin client. Let's create a client using new client instance. And then let's set endpoint to be process.environment. And as always, don't write it out, copy it. It's gonna save you some headaches. And put an exclamation point at the end to override type safety here. Let's add set project and do the same thing. Don't write it out, copy it. Process.environment, and there we go. And set key. That is the next AppWrite key. So process.environment. There we go. And then let's go ahead and let's return. For example, if we need account, we're gonna go ahead and return new account instance and pass in our admin client. There we go. So right now we pretty much created the same thing that we have inside of here, right? So instead of having this huge session client, we now have just this admin client, and we just return the account. And you can already kind of see the difference between the admin client and the session client. In the session client, we set the endpoint and we set the project, but we don't set the key, which means that this session client is pretty harmless, right? That's why we're going to use this when user needs to create something, and we're going to use this when we as an admin need to create something like a new user. So I also want to show you one kind of a important thing in Next.js. So Next.js is a framework that allows you, to create your front end and your back end in the same project. There is nothing stopping me from, for example, inside of my page.tsx here, doing this. For example, create admin client from @lib_app_write. So I just did this, right? So I can go ahead and, for example, console log create admin client here. Let's see what happens. I'm going to go inside of my project here, and I'm just going to go to the root of my page, localhost 3000 right here. I will refresh. Can I see anything? Let's see. Okay, I'm not sure why I can't see anything, but here's the thing. I don't even want to be able to do this, right? I want to be thrown an error when I do these kinds of things. And especially, I think if I add, oh, okay, I know why I'm not seeing console logs. We are seeing something. We are seeing it here in the terminal. There we go. Hello. It's because this is a server component by default. So if you go ahead and you add use client here inside of your app folder page.tsx when we are playing with the buttons. There we go. You can see I have the entire admin client right here. Not only that, but take a look at this console log. I can see all of my environment variables, right? And you can see how my set key is thankfully hidden right here, right? You can see how these two are filled because they have the next public prefix, but my key is thankfully hidden. But still, I can now kind of access this. A malicious user can definitely find their way around this and fire it inside of client side. That is a very bad thing to happen. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to do bun add server only or npm install server only. This is the version I'm using, 0.0.1, if you want the exact one. And what I want you to do is go inside of your new lib, so inside of source lib_app_write, and at the top of your file, simply add import server only. Once you do that, you immediately get an error here. You're importing a component that needs server only. That only works in a server component. So that's how we are protecting this little util, so you don't accidentally do things like this, right? You need an error to happen. And right now, if you remove use client from here, you're not getting an error. Why? Well, because this is a server component. This is an equivalent of the environment is equivalent of an API route. So it's safe to do it this way. But you never know, especially if you're new with Next.js, you might accidentally add a use client somewhere and accidentally add a very, very dangerous import. That's why they developed this package server only, so that you can protect yourself from that. This will fail the builds, and obviously it will give you a big warning right here. So you can remove use client, and you can remove this as well for now. There we go. I just wanted you to do that. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's see what does it say next inside of the SSR initialization. The first one we need to handle is the register route, right? So we already did this. We set the environment variables here. We created our first project, and you can see that they say that for this tutorial, we are only going to need sessions.write. So